Hey there, welcome to the Breakthrough Creative. I am your host, John McDavitt, and this is the place where we talk about the business of art and the art of business. Today is my very first coaching episode. I have a guest who is going to be asking me questions about pricing, about finding your niche, your niche. We go over all kinds of scenarios of how to pronounce that word. And we also tackle the issue of finding your niche as an artist, as a creative business person. And we also talk a little bit about workload. And my guest who's asking the questions today is my friend Jason D. Knegt. And he is a pretty amazing guy. We've become friends, fast friends over the last 6-7 months or so. And he is working in the service industry, which, as you can imagine, has been, really struck down by COVID, and it's starting to come back a little bit. But he has used this downtime to work more on his craft, working on portraits and artwork in Procreate. And he also uses the airbrush. He's a pretty interesting guy just in general, and a really good guy. And I'm going to have his interview in just a second. But first, I was going to ask you, would you please take a moment, and if you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on the podcast, would you subscribe to the channel? Would you subscribe to the Breakthrough Creative, please? That is going to help us get the word out more and more about the Breakthrough Creative. And if you would share these episodes with the artists in your life, I'd greatly appreciate that too, because it's just going to help more and more people. And that's what this is all about. So with that, let's get into our Q&A.
John, thank you so much for having me. This is super cool. I'm actually a big fan of the podcast. So for me, kind of an honor. So thank you for having me. But my name is Jason D. Knegt. I am what can I say? I'm transitioning into becoming a full-time freelance artist. I have been working in the hospitality industry for the last 20 years or so, mostly as a bartender. I had a great job for 13 years straight, where I was slinging drinks at a pool down here in Orlando, Florida. And with the COVID crisis and the reductions, I was let go from the job. I had always been doing artwork on some level ever since I finished school. I got a degree in illustration years ago. And it's always been a balance between making money with your day job and growing as an artist, but also trying to make money as an artist, maybe someday live the dream and make that your full-time gig for me. So with this whole, crisis of, at least on the economic side of losing your job, it's kind of a hidden opportunity for me to kind of put more time into that. So I've been on furlough since March, and now it's January. Lucky, I was able to get a part-time job in November. So I'm working 2 days a week, slinging drinks again at a new place, which I love. It's a great spot, but it's almost like the best of both worlds, because I have a little bit of steady income and I'm also forced to push more on the art thing. So I'm actually doing more commissions now, not just because I want to, but also because I have to. So I'm kind of in that in-between phase where I got one foot in both ponds. So that's kind of where I'm at and who I am. But I don't know if that sums enough.
I love your slinging drinks. I like that as the terminology.
Yes, man, I love it.
Is that bar speak? Is that at the bartender world?
Slinging drinks, yeah. Behind it means you're working on this side of the bar, slinging drinks. There's a whole lexicon behind that.
I love it.
Oh yeah.
So, you and I, we've started talking. I don't know. Is it 6 months, 7 months now?
Yeah, it was actually right around when I got furloughed. We have a mutual friends, guests that actually come into my old job. They know John, or they know you, and I was working on an artwork, or trying to figure out the color schematics, and just trying to learn by doing trial and error. Super frustrating. And as I'm kind of like developing as an artist, I like to share my stories on Instagram or Facebook, and people see like, oh, this is where I'm struggling, this is where I'm developing. And she actually reached out to me and said, oh, you got to meet my friend John. He knows his stuff. kind of awkward at first. I'm like, I don't know this guy. I'm going to be bugging him. This guy, John, you're super duper helpful. Not only like kind of like, you know, just kind of getting to know you, which has been awesome, but you pushed me through this sticking point I had in developing the style I've been working on. Just using Procreate, for example. Oh, I sent you, this is what I'm working on. You came back to me like 15 minutes later, try this. Eyes opened up, and I've been cranking out work ever since. So I can't thank you enough just for that little boost. But yeah, that's how we picked up. So it's been awesome so far.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. I mean, it was fun to do, and you know, it's always cool when you have a friend say, "Hey, I've got a friend that you know maybe you could chat with," and you know, you reached out to me, and the way you reached out was it was just really cool. I mean, you were very personable, friendly, and you know, you told me, you know, kind of where you're at, and I love investing time in people like that. It's like, yeah, because I mean, that's my story too. Is I'd reach out to people, and then they'd respond, and you know, some of them wouldn't be as friendly, and you know, they're like, but you know, the people who did, it's like, oh, they're keepers, man. And you know, we've actually developed a friendship now over the past several months, and you started doing something that was really interesting where on Messenger we were typing back and forth, and then a video popped up from you, and it was like, that's efficient and convenient, but it was very personable as well. And then we just had this back and forth where we're sending each other these videos, and I've actually put that into my bag of communication tricks to at times just go, I'm making a video for this person. And it's mind-blowing for people. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, they took time to record something when technically it's actually easier to do,
It's so
right?
true.
But it's
Yes.
so personal.
Yeah. You know, you know, not to get off on a tangent, but you know, I'm into like working out and fitness and sports and stuff like that. And I was working with this guy for a while out in he's out in California now. But you know, like, okay, part of the membership is like, if you have an issue with your form with the squat or whatever, just send it to me and we'll correct it or whatever. You get a tweak or a twinge, just let us know. And then it's usually they type back, okay, try this move, try turning this angle. And then this guy started doing that too. He's like, all right, and he's getting like hundreds and thousands of people, I'm sure, hitting him up. Hey man, my shoulder hurts. He gets on the thing, he's like, hey, listen, man, I'm sorry this hurts. Blah, blah, try this, try this, try this. I'm like, and I'm thinking like, okay, first of all, it's easier. But I'm thinking, man, this guy really cares. And
Yeah.
it's like, and the technology is right at your hands. So like, why
Yeah.
wouldn't you? It's easier. It's more personal. For me, it's the way to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. So that's really cool. Just getting to know you in that way, and thanks for opening my eyes to that. That's pretty cool. That's the best part about this kind of communication too, is you never know what you're going to learn from somebody else, you know. And if you're open to learning all your life, chances are you can have a pretty good life.
Could not agree more.
Yeah. So you know, Jay and I were talking about this episode, and Jay has brought some questions to the table, and we're gonna kind of run through them, and maybe some other questions will come up, but I'm gonna let him know what I think, and we'll see what we arrive at. So
Cool. So
yeah.
just fire away.
Fire away, baby.
Awesome. So like you said, I got a couple of them here. I'm hoping these aren't just questions I have, but other people may have as well, and I think they are. But the first one is, I mean, as a creative, as an artist, just to kind of fill in the gaps a little bit. Me personally, what I'm doing is I'm trying to zero in and focus in my work on digital work on Procreate. It's just a little bit more efficient. I don't have to paint and then ship. I can just do it digitally and set it, resize, super easy. So I'm just trying to focus my forces there. So I'm a visual artist, but I guess this would apply to any artist, any creative, but it's how do you appropriately charge for your clients? Because art isn't really, not to get too woo-woo, but it's not like, I don't know, building a house. Though there is an art to building a house, but it's structured. It's like, we got to do this, and this is what you're going to get at the end. This is exactly what it's going to look like. Art is a little bit more nebulous, a little bit more creative in the fact that you can't, it's a little bit harder to nail down. You can come up with a formula and a system, but I always get lost as far as how much to charge people, because I don't know if it's as a client, they might say like, how much for a portrait? I do a lot of portraits. How much for a portrait for one person? How much for two people? Well, I could have a portrait for one person who's wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap. Might take me an hour. And I can have another portrait from a beautiful woman with flowing curly hair, with ornate decor and jewelry. And it's both one portrait, one person. It's going to take me two different lengths of time and amount of work to do that. So do you do by hours worked? Do you do it by final product? How do you explain it to your client? Am I shaping this question enough?
Yeah, you've got it. You've got it. So pricing, pricing is the boogeyman of the artist's world, right? The professional artist world. And it's the Wild West too. It's all over the place. You'll see people online now who are maybe charging $25 for a portrait, and then that there are people out there who are making millions of dollars for one portrait. Fine artists somewhere. So you need to learn your market and find your place in the market. And I tend to look at revenue sources in two different silos. There's individual patrons, so like a private commission, and then there's corporate. And for individual patrons, private commissions, you can have people with deep pockets and you can have people who have no money. You're going to be all over the place, right? With corporate, chances are there's like more money available. It's not always the case. Like what I'm talking about right now isn't anything to do with absolutes, right? But corporate money, they're making an investment in an artist, in a process that is going to have returns for them, right? If you're creating a portrait for someone, likely they're going to hang it on their wall or they're going to give it as a gift. And, when you start getting into the upper echelons, like if somebody's charging 5, 10,000, or you're up higher than that, people may even be looking at those things as investments, So, I see artists all over the place, Instagram, on Twitter. I see artists who are creating original character art for people's avatars that they're going to put onto their accounts. I get called by people who want me to do say a portrait for their mother. And a lot of times people have no clue at all what the charge is going to be, unless you've, worked it out and you've got a website somewhere and they'll go, oh, okay, here are the prices. Somebody to take a look at later on to look at her pricing is the Monkey Brush. My buddy, Deb Oliver. I mean, she's a sharp cookie and does beautiful work. You know it, of course, because she's all over Instagram and whatnot.
He's awesome.
So do you charge hourly? Do you charge by the portrait? I am a big proponent of charging by the project. Okay. You can do hourly if you want. Here's the issue I find with hourly is if you take too long, right? And they're like, oh, you took 30 hours to do this thing for $30 an hour. It's $900, and they weren't expecting that. It's almost not a realistic approach to take with a client, unless they say that's how they want to do it and they're fine with it. But then you've got to figure out, what are your terms? Like, is there a limit on it? And certainly you don't want to milk it, right? But the thing I never liked about an hourly rate is that it kind of caps your earning potential to time and creation. For me, I kind of look at portraits and go, how long is this going to take me? How much work do I have? How detailed is it? How good are the reference images? Like, portraits are a challenging one for me myself to quote, because there's just so many variables and expectations for people. So part of the job is really to find out who is your client and what are their expectations. So for instance, what's the output? Am I painting it in oils? Am I painting it in acrylics? Is it a pencil drawing? Now you're into the real world, and you've got materials, so that you need to take into consideration, as opposed to digital, which, you know, you and I both work a lot in Procreate, and it doesn't mean that it's easier, but there are different efficiencies with it, right? So you need an iPad and some electricity and an Apple Pencil, and then at some point you're going to have to have output for them. So either off of a printer that you've got, and then you've got to mail it, or what I'll do with clients is suggest, how about when I finish it and it's done to whatever size you want, I'll send you the digital file, or I can send it to Walgreens or wherever. I mean, it might not be the best printer for them, but now I'm starting to figure out, what are the deliverables? What's the time? We need this in 2 days. Okay, that's going to impact the price. You know, some people are like, well, why would that impact the price? I once had a client, he gave me a rush, an overnight. He called me, I want to say at 6 p.m, and he needed a drawing done for product. So he was a corporate client. And I took the job and I finished it that night. I finished it in the morning, actually, but we had a couple of rounds that night where I sent stuff to him and he gave me feedback. And then in the morning, I delivered it to him. And I want to say I charged him $250 rush charge on top of the regular price. And he was shocked. Like, he was like, why did you charge extra for this? And I said, you called me at 6:30 in the evening and I delivered it before 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but my other artists don't do that. Well, I'm not your other artists. And it was fine. He paid me, but it was a very, you know, I mean, should we've had that discussion before I started the job? Well, I guess I would put it back to him professionally and corporately. Do we need to have that discussion? You know? So anyway, I'm getting into a lot of stuff. It almost feels like we're holding Jello, right? But I think what you need to do is figure out, how long does it actually take you to do something, knowing that there are going to be variables in there, right? Maybe you run up against a likeness of somebody that for some reason they're just hard to capture, and it's going to take you a little bit more time. Maybe you've got a situation where they give you photo reference that isn't spectacular, and maybe at that point you've got to cancel the job because you just can't do it with what they've given you. And you know, maybe you kind of know your speed in black and white versus your speed in color. Okay. And then what I would suggest is you come up with a rate, and then know that that's what you're going to complete the portrait for. And I would encourage you as well to touch base with the client throughout the process. Some people don't like to do that. I for one, I want to make sure that I'm capturing things for the clients. And maybe this is my corporate background where I go, I need to let them in on this. You know, another thing to consider is you could show somebody progress and explain to them it's progress, and they're going to freak out because they can't see the finished product. So you got to kind of read the room in that regard. So does that make sense? What I've shared?
Absolutely. It's kind of where I've kind of landed. I've done a lot of trial and error, a lot of error, and I've had more success kind of in that lane that you were just describing. Kind of take an estimate of how long I think it's going to take, have a set rate, adjust it. I've also tinkered with progress reports versus waiting till the end, and I've had like you know, as you know, I would say I've been lucky. Most people that I've shown the progress to that wanted to see that were thrilled with everything. And then occasionally you have somebody, it's just like, you know, tweak this, and it's all of a sudden you're in another direction. And not to sound arrogant, but as an artist, generally speaking, usually you might know what's best. Not always, but you don't always know exactly what they want, but you know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And there might be a divergence there. So sometimes I found that holding it off to the end, like you said about reading the room, if you know you're going to have that kind of a client that you're going to be working with, maybe it's better to hold off to the end and then make your adjustments afterwards. That actually leads into a tail-off question about this one, if you don't mind me asking. And I've had this happen to me as well, where I've waited to the end, or even had the progress picks all the way to the end, and all of a sudden, we agreed on this. This is the price. This is the product. This is what we have. and all of a sudden, it's not quite what I imagined. And a lot of times, it's not their fault, but a client might have trouble explaining or, conveying the image they have in their head. And like at that point, you have a product, you've done the work. In your mind as an artist, you're thinking, I did what I was asked to do. For me, it's all game, set, match. But in their mind, they're like, I'm paying you for a product and you didn't deliver that product.
Yeah.
It's like if I asked you to come over and fix my sink, but it's still leaking, but you did the work, now we have an imbalance. So at that point, where do you go? Do you scrap it and just start and give them a whole new project for free? Do you charge them an editing fee? What's your plan of attack in a situation like that?
So did you get money up front on that project?
Usually I'll try to do a half on before, half at the delivery.
Yeah.
I've been a little bit, and again, we talk about errors. I've been a little lax with some people where I just kind of say like, oh, I trust you, I'll get it at the end.
Sure.
And I've been burned a few times. I did the work and weren't happy and I got nothing for it.
Yeah.
So that's on me. And that's part of the learning curve. So, in light of not letting that happen again.
Yeah. Yeah. In the digital world with portraits now, and I suppose, I guess traditionally, if you're working traditionally, like you, I get half up front. And then that's where, I really explain the terms. I try to get very, very thorough so that they know what they're getting. And if they give me a photo, I'll tell them it's going to look like the photo. Like that's the likeness that I'm going to be capturing. And sometimes, people are asking me, well, can you turn a little 3/4? And I'll say, I can't, because it's not 3D. I don't know what they look like from the side. Photo foreshortens certain areas that it makes them look flatter than they are. And if you start I can't do that. So I try to, snake that stuff out early, and then, really, really try to feel out, who am I dealing with? Am I dealing with somebody who is nervous and controlling? Because those clients can be scary, am I dealing with some people are just like, whatever, just, here, I'll write you the $500 check right now. And they just trust that you're going to do it. I may at times, and I do this more with corporate, it's like, here is going to be, it's $350 for this process, and it includes 2 revisions. Okay. And then, the cool thing about that is everything is spelled out. And then I'll say, if it goes beyond the 2 revisions, this is going to be the cost. So I work that in. And meanwhile, the deadline is doing this. Like oftentimes for a private client, the deadline is doing this because they got to get it for a birthday or a gift or something is approaching. And so that's how I tend to do it. If somebody says, well, I'm not happy with anything, and they're unreasonable, maybe they've had a bad day, maybe they're having a bad life, I don't know. And I'll say to them, I'm struggling here because I want to please you with your expectations. I want to deliver to you, but what we started with and where we're at now are really far apart. Can you see that? And maybe they say no. And then at that point, I'll ask them, do you want to continue on with the project? And I've never had anybody say no yet, but if they say no, I've got half down, I've done a bunch of work. Maybe they're frustrated with that, but it's like, I don't know what else to do for you then. Yep. And then you can decide if you want to give them money back or not. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems like a nice balance because on both ends, in a less than ideal world, neither is happy, but at least you walked away with something.
Right.
So I get it.
And you're a service guy, that's what I really appreciate about you as well. And I think I've got a heart like that too, where it's like, hey, I want you to be really happy with this. I want this whole thing to be a good experience. I want it to be money well spent. I want you to enjoy this for the rest of your life. And I want you to come back. Right?
Yes. So true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds a little corny and a little, I don't know, cliche or whatever, but of course, as a creative, as an artist, you want to make money, you want to get ahead, and you want to cover your expenses and do all this stuff and be a professional. But, you know, the cherry on top, the icing on the cake is always to see how happy the person is with your work, because that's something you can never put a price tag on. And it's just, that's so invaluable. So yeah, of course, the service is such a huge part of it because you care.
Yeah.
I mean, you should.
Yeah. And why can't both of those things be true, right?
Yes.
Why can't I serve somebody, deliver something good, and make a good living at it? Both of those things can exist in the same world.
Yep, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So shall we move on to another question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So I got two keyed up here. Let me see here. Well, on the side of professionalism, let's talk about controlling workload.
Yeah.
Now, this is something, me personally, I've kind of struggled with, especially since for so long I was working 40 to 50 hours a week. The way I would operate in today's world, I will do a painting, a picture, either for myself or for a client, and I'll post it on my social media, my Instagram. And I'll put it up, and then immediately, and like, you know, I'm super lucky and thankful for this, I would get 3, 4, maybe 5, at least inquiries about work, which is awesome. You know, that's the way you kind of generate business. However, if I'm working, you know, 40, 50 hours a week, my time is limited. So I'd be in this weird little bind where I get 5 requests and I can only fulfill one of them within a certain time frame. So the question is about controlling workload. I mean, on one hand, you have open the floodgates, get them all in, push your social media, push your advertising, you know, talk to your friends, and, you know, I'll take all jobs. But then there's the reality of executing the work. And if you take in so many jobs that you can't execute on time, you're going to tarnish your name because you're the guy who never finishes work. Whereas on the other hand, which I kind of lean on this side, where I'm like very stingy with opening the gate, like, okay, yep, I can get you in 2 months. I can get you in 1 month. And then all of a sudden I'm the guy that like takes forever to get the job done. So I don't know, maybe there's no answer to this, but is there a formula, a system, a general rule or principle as far as controlling workload?
Yeah. It's a great question. And it's a good problem to have. You know, that's probably the first and foremost thing to look at is like, we're in this to have work and to make money. And it's a good problem to have when it comes along. So in my experience, I found that I could understand what the client needed pretty quickly, and I can draw quickly and communicate with the client to make sure we're on the right track throughout. And if I were to you know, be going the wrong way on something, I can U-turn real quick and so we were talking sports earlier. It's almost like you know, a cornerback losing his wide receiver, and if you got recovery speed, you can get back, right, and at least defend or maybe intercept the ball.
Sure. Yeah.
Or be there at least for the tackle to stop a touchdown.
Nice insurance policy.
So you know, I found that knowing myself and you knowing yourself, and for any of the listeners out there, it's like, you got to know yourself. What are you really good at? Because that's going to be, you know, what you lean on at times when things are really, really, there's a lot coming at you. Okay. So what I found was that I could have a lot of work, and so my process, and I'll share this in another episode sometime, but I have a document open because I am administratively functional. Okay. Like, I'm a math guy and I can organize things, but I'd rather throw crayons on the ground and just start working on something. Right. So, what I have is I have a project list, and that project list will have the year at the top, and then I'll have my clients on it. And so I've got my regulars, and then I've got maybe new clients down below, and I'll write down the projects. I might have 4 or 5 with one client, maybe one with another. Maybe there's one nothing's going on with right now. And then I'll have individual pieces that I'm creating for clients. And I'll write down what the project is and maybe the steps that go with the project. And then I'll have a price next to it, and I'll have a deadline. Okay. And so now it's kind of like I've taken everything that's inside my head and gone, whoo, and it's sitting on the computer. So I don't really have to be worrying about that. And then what I'll do is any project that is active is in black. It's just in black ink. Any project or component of a project that is out for feedback, like I've finished a part of it and it's off to the client and I'm waiting to hear back from them, that is gray. I know that I'm waiting to hear back on that. Any project that is hot, the deadline is due real soon, or I don't have answers from the client, because that'll happen too, is red. And so I'll know when I look at my list, it's like, okay, I got to manage these 2 red things right away. And that's in between like other calls coming in. You know, you got to call for a new project, or maybe somebody wants to add something. Like a lot of times nothing is convenient, right? Relationships aren't convenient. You know, something goes on with your family or a friend, and you've got to kind of tend to that, or tell people, hey, I need to push you up. So it's not just, you know, controlling workload, it's like controlling life load and making it all work, right? And like Deb, for instance, that we were talking about earlier, the incredible portrait artist, the monkey brush, she works all night. She's got 2 little kids and tends to them during the day and all, but then she's a night owl, and it's quiet and nothing's going on, and so she can get her work done that way. So, you know, I guess something to know is you need to make it work for yourself, and determine what you're comfortable with. Years ago, I had multiple clients at this one company, and I probably had 25 different people I worked with over the course of the year, and I'd have maybe 5 different projects going or maybe 5 different clients going at a time with multiple projects. And then I had other clients with stuff going on, and then I might have other, you know, a mural or who knows what. And I would get up and I would sit and I would look at my list, and I would be baffled. I wouldn't know where to start. Even if I had 5 red things highlighted, because everything needed to keep moving. And I didn't realize it until after that year had passed, that my heart would race while I was looking at this stuff for about an hour. I would have like a little panic attack. And then after the hour, it would kind of pass. And I mean, it literally, like, you wouldn't know I'm having a panic attack. I was just kind of sitting here like this, looking and trying to decide, and what do I do? And then maybe look at sports for a minute to get my eyes off of it, or check something out, and then come back to it. And after that hour, I'd say to myself, well, I got to start doing something. So I get to work, and then it would all just start to fall into place. So the less I thought about it, the more I got it done. So it's a challenging one, because I don't think you really know how to start controlling your workload until you got too much. And then you start to realize, oh, that's my limit, you know? And then you've got to decide, how are you going to communicate that to clients? Because you can't communicate it after you've taken the work on, right? Because that's a bad look. But then what you need to do is figure out, okay, how am I going to manage everything? And I've been a big proponent of, my clients don't need to know how busy I am. Like they don't need to be nervous that I've got too much work going on. And I'm always there to show support for them, and calm, because, you know, I want to be at least one spot in their life where they don't have to think about anything in regard to me. I'm there to make their nightmares go away, right? Even if I'm not feeling it, I need to present it. And one of the issues I had with this big company I worked with that had multiple clients for me was, they would sit around in product development meetings, and every time they talked about a project, they'd mention the name of the designer working with them. So my name was cool, but it was also kind of like, people knew that I'm working on all this stuff. And finally, somebody was really upset with me one day, because they heard that I was going to be working on somebody else's project before theirs, but their deadline was further out, while this person's deadline was tighter. And so I said, hey, have I ever let you down before? No. Okay. I'm not going to let you down this time. what I need you to do is think of me like air traffic control. And I am going to have the plane with the least amount of fuel land first so that they don't crash. And I'm going to make sure that you get on the runway too when it's your time. Cool? And we had that conversation and we never had to talk about it again. So, I just framed it for them. So yeah, sometimes that whole workload thing, you've got to, the client has knowledge of your workload, maybe in a situation like that. So, does that help? I mean, that's a little bit more, philosophy maybe rather than absolutely how you need to do it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like it's a nebulous thing. I don't think there's a hard and stiff answer. I was looking more for a philosophy kind of answer, just to kind of a general practice. And from what I'm gathering from what you're saying, it's a little bit more like, I really am appreciating with the way you're explaining it, like the value of taking action and how that kind of starts the ball rolling, and then you figure things out in real time. From what I'm gathering from what you're saying is like test the workload, bring in the jobs, and then once you see where your limit is, now you can kind of auto correct and auto regulate from there. So yeah, that definitely helps. And the detailed stories actually makes it a little more colorful, a little bit more real. So I do appreciate it. So
yeah, you got it. Hey, one more thought on that.
Yeah.
Is being proactive with your client when you have a lot going on is really important, because you may have, and again, I think I'm speaking to this a little bit more from a corporate perspective, working with corporate clients than maybe with a private client, because it's not a project to them in the sense that a corporate is, right? Where they've got to answer to other people or show progress. So if it's a corporate client, a couple of the things as far as workload goes is you never, and I guess this is with a private client, you don't want the final deliverables to be a surprise. You don't want anybody to be surprised at what they're receiving from you. So especially in corporate where you're in development, so maybe this is more for development work, you want them in on the process so they can quickly go, no, we can't do that because whatever, the CEO hates green and I'm going to get fired. Okay, great. Now I'm not sending you to a meeting that's 2 minutes away with this green image, right? So, it's really important to be highly communicative with your client.
Yeah, on point. So there's one other thing I did want to talk to you about, and again, I don't think I'm the only one that feels this way, but it's just about finding your niche, your niche.
Yeah.
I never know if I'm saying that right or not.
Yeah. Niche, Niche, Nick, he. Yeah, who knows? Niche. We'll go with niche.
Niche. Anyway, it's fine. You're a little cubby hole or whatever in the art world or the creative world. I hate to sound so woo, but creativity, it can be so nebulous, and where you have something that's a little bit more mechanical, and there's this split. I mean, and if you're going to be a professional creative person, you have to have some structure and some mechanical, hate to use that word, but like almost like a rigid way of doing things, so you could be prolific and you could be productive and you can be reliable. And it's almost this balancing act. If anybody out there is an artist or who draws, I always compare it to like the drawing method of using structure and gesture. Whereas you have to have both to have a great final product. So you have structure where everything is structurally aligned and sound and on point and accurate. But if you only have structure, it's kind of boring. It's kind of flat. It's almost like, why did I even take the time to draw this? Whereas you have the gesture end of things where you're flowing, you're creative, you're sweeping, you're swooping, and it's this beautiful, emotional, you feel it, but it's just like a nebulous bowl of water. It's nothing. It has no weight or structure. It's just a mess of feelings. But when you put them together, then you have art, then you have mastery, then you have something that's really unique and it works. So I'm being a little bit kind of all over the place with the way I'm thinking about this. But as a creative, I think that applies to music, that applies to the arts, it applies to anything where you have to kind of put your almost soul into it. Now, being professional, the dream is that You just get out there and you be creative. You just express your soul and yourself, and then the world loves it. Like, man, I want to pay you for that. You're awesome. Just keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to throw money at you. Obviously, I mean, it can happen, but it's not likely. So, I guess in the more realistic world, the ideal is to create a market and a niche for yourself that people want. But more realistically, I think you have to kind of look into the world and see what people need, see what people want, and attack that. How do you find your niche, keep it professional, and how to be productive, prolific, and creative all at the same time?
Yeah.
Did I
Yeah.
just dump a whole bucket of water on you?
No, it's really good. It's really good because I think it's something that we all struggle with. And I think it's something that everybody in the world struggles with. Maybe one of the biggest struggles with being a creative, there is a tendency to believe the storybook fairy tale side, that we love every project we do. We just love to draw. I think we get caught up, and other people in who aren't artists get caught up in, you don't have to pay an artist anything because they just love what they do. So somehow they're getting compensated in a couple of ways, and that's good enough. And I've never been that guy. I made a promise to myself as a 13-year-old kid that I'm going to make money as an artist, because I didn't want to work an office job. I didn't want to, do something that I wouldn't find enjoyable. So I began pursuing it, and then, I stumbled into making a chunk of money airbrushing t-shirts when I was young, and was pursuing special effects makeup and studying under a master in that, and then decided when I was 22 that wasn't what I was going to do. And so now I've got these really strong drawing skills, really strong airbrush skills, and really strong relational skills, and an ability to communicate and understand people. And so I didn't know where that was going to lead me. And then I met this guy. He knew about special effects with me. That's how we kind of connected over that. I went over to cast somebody's face for him. And he brought me up into his studio, and he was a sculptor, and he worked in the toy design industry. And so we kind of slowly got to know each other, and all of my skills, my drawing skills, my sculpting skills, the knowledge of special effects makeup, all of that stuff was applicable. You talk about applying your skills, right? It was applicable to the toy design industry. Suddenly I found myself designing Happy Meal toys. And so there's all this discovery that's happening for me while I'm applying my knowledge and craft and skills to this world that I never intended to be in, that I'm finding I enjoy the people, and I enjoy the work. And it's challenging because now I've got to make sure that I'm really matching this profile of Disney's Hunchback to the character art and the front view. And I'm learning skills, right? And I'm learning engineering skills from this guy, because the arm has a spring in it. It needs to move like this. So I'm drawing mechanisms for him that I know nothing about, but we're talking through it, and I'm his hands, right? And I'm creating this, so I'm applying my skills to that. And then I start to go in some meetings with him to these different studios. And at the time, I don't know if it's the same now, it seems like more people draw and have really strong drawing skills. But I suppose I was surprised that there wasn't the amount of quality drawings hanging up in these places. And I was like, wait, because I didn't go to college or school for any of this stuff. I'm like, shouldn't everybody be able to draw if they're a designer or an illustrator? Shouldn't they be able to draw really well and draw form and draw with control? And it wasn't out there. Like I was a valuable commodity, and that came into the forefront for me. And that whole time, that was like through my 20s, I was thinking to myself, I don't have a style. I don't have any kind of style. But that helped me with my niche, because I was a chameleon, and I could go into different styles, and I could draw a Disney princess, and I could draw Darth Vader from Star Wars, and I could make up a Ratfink style crazy Rod character for a slot machine. I could do these things. So my niche actually became guy who draws to help clients communicate a product or a service or a good. So that became my niche.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool.
I mean, and it's weird then because um, you I think of I've said niche Nike a million different ways. I think a niche is is maybe another term for uh, revenue stream. Okay,
Yeah. Yep.
so like uh, some people know me only as a caricature guy, and they hire me to draw funny pictures of people, right? And then when I was in at a client doing product development, now I'm out of toys. At least this company, this is a hard goods company, and they were making humidors, and they were making plastic pieces and printing on board, and they were all over the place. And I would get in and I would help them develop a project to a certain point, and then they would ask me, do you know anybody who works digitally? And I was just starting to work digitally, and I said, yeah, I do. And they said, really, you work in Illustrator? And I didn't know it at the time, but I just said, yeah. And they gave me a project, and I was able to, in a week, figure it out and deliver it to them. And then it became, hey, who does this work for you? Well, we have a few people. Can I do some of that work? Yeah, you can. Yeah, I'd love you to do that work, John, because I'm building a relationship with them. And then I wouldn't know what to charge, right? So I'd ask
Right.
them, do you mind if I ask you, what's the budget for that? Like, what do you pay? Oh yeah, we pay like $900 for one of these. Okay, are you cool if I charge you 900 for that? Oh yeah, of course. So I'm now learning. I'm on the inside, right? And I'm learning that this is what they'll pay, and I'm thrilled to be earning while I'm learning.
Yeah.
And so you just keep adding skill sets to things, and then you just you figure out where you can make money and what you can do, and maybe just to kind of broach um, enjoying the work, and maybe overcoming maybe boredom with some of the work, because you're doing the same things. You're doing part of the processes, you're going to do the same way over and over and over, right? Like, you're going to draw a nose is a nose is a nose, but it's not. They're all different, but you kind of know the basics of how a nose is formed. So we're going to draw a nose a million different ways from a million different angles in our lifetime if we're doing portraits. And what I've found is that the discipline takes over when I'm not enjoying a project. I now have discipline to rely on, because I've got to get it done. And frankly, not every day is going to be fun. Not every project is going to be fun, and there may be a string of them that are not fun, or you're going through a tough time in your life and you just don't feel like it. Like, I don't wait for the muse. I don't believe in that. I
Right.
think it's like, get to work. You've got to get to work, and you'll figure it out. And I mean, there's times for rest. There are times where you go, I just don't have it today at 2 o'clock. This thing isn't due for 2 days. I'm going to go swimming or do something different right now. But then, that's where controlling your workload and knowing your dead, right? You kind of got to know where you're at and yourself. Um,
Yep.
but then, back to enjoying your work. The other side of that teeter totter that is I'm on one side, kind of weighing it down. Well, my client and the deadline and the money is on the other side, right? And I've got a relationship with that client, and I don't want to let them down. Like, I would run through walls for my client. I'd stay up all night finishing projects if there was an emergency, or if it just so happened that that's just how the deadline was falling. I'm going to get it done for them by when they need it. And if somebody comes back to me and it's ridiculous, they're like, oh, we moved this deadline up 10 days, so it's due tomorrow. It's like, no, I can't, I can't do that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I approach that aspect of the question you started with.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's always something that's on, I'm sure, again, a lot of people's minds, is that balance of, as far as niche, what is it, an inch wide and a mile deep, focusing, zeroing, mastering one specific thing, or kind of broadening out your skill sets and being almost like a jack of all trades or a Renaissance man, where, you open your whole world when you, like, was it Scott Adams who talks about skill stacking?
Yeah.
So again, it's like, do you go like a laser beam or a flamethrower? So I could definitely see the appeal on both and the drawbacks of both. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's making a little bit more sense.
Do you think that there are actionable steps from the discussion we just had in your world?
Yeah, for sure. To be honest, I mean, these are questions that I've grappled with, I don't want to say since the dawn of time, but since I started doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
So like everything else, I've tried to trial and error my way through, mostly error. And, it can be a little bit painful, but it's also rewarding.
Yeah.
And when you learn the hard way, you learn it right. You learn it, thoroughly.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things that you're saying are actually right in line with, the kind of way I've kind of just by default rolled into, as far as appropriately charging clients. I listened to your interview with the Monkey Brush, which was super enlightening. And I checked out her page and I saw how she had her format. So, okay, she charges this much. Then I started comparing prices. What do they charge for, something like a caricature at Disney, and how much do they charge here? And like you said, they're all over the place. So you kind of trial and error, and I did find my way there. Haven't mastered it, but it's kind of right along the same lines you said, where I take an estimate about how long it's going to take me to do a project, set a rate, and then leave a little bit of room for flexibility. Like you said about making the edits. This is new to me, and a great idea is talking to the client beforehand. Say, okay, we'll make room for maybe 1 or 2 edits. After that, it's going to be set amount. This way, there's no surprises, like you said. Very actionable. As far as controlling workload, actionable steps. It's almost like going to the gym. You want to see how much you bench? Keep putting the plates on until you can't push anymore, and there's your limit. Work within that range. Build up your strength gradually. Build up your speed, your proficiency. So totally makes sense. And finding your niche. Hey man, it's a pretty thick one, but yeah, actionable steps. Man, from what I'm picking up is just keep stacking your skill sets. Keep an open mind. Not that you have to say yes to everything, but don't say no to anything just because it's not right down this single solitary lane. And good things will come of it, and you might find your niche in a place you weren't looking for. So these are the kind of ideas I'm kind of drawing from you right now. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, I think so. And one last thing came to me around finding your niche is look for problems to solve with your skills.
Nice.
Look for problems to solve. Did you ever see, I don't know how many people have seen this movie, but it's the M. Night Shyamalan, Bruce Willis movie from the late 90s. No, he did do The Sixth Sense with him, but it's the superhero one.
Oh, Unbreakable.
Unbreakable.
Yes.
And you remember he finally comes to terms. He's like, yeah, I do have all this strength and this power. And he asks Samuel L. Jackson, what do I do now? And Samuel L. Jackson says into the phone, go to where people are and it will become clear. He says something like that. And so he goes to the train station, and it's this dramatic scene, right? Where he walks in, and if he touches them, he can kind of see their sin, or he can see where they've done evil. And so he raises his arms out, right? And, and then he's seeing, all this stuff that people are doing, and he happens to bump into a serial killer, and it's like, that's the problem I got to go solve. So it's almost a little bit, it's not like, don't try to get any serial killers as clients, okay? But it's like, what problems can I solve with what my skills and my knowledge?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. It's just, where can I be of use? Where can I be of service? Yeah, that seems like it would take you in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So cool, man.
definitely.
Dude, thank you for being my guest and asking questions, and it's awesome.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's been an honor. Like I said, I'm a big fan of the podcast. I've been picking up so much. I mean, if you ever want to go, I mean, if anybody wants to check out my stuff, you could actually see the development, where I was, what kind of stuff I was doing, what kind of stuff I'm doing now. And a lot of that big turn, that big push came from me interacting with you, John.
Oh,
As you know,
wow.
I've been trying to like zero in and focus in on portraits, digital portraits. I can produce them at speed. I'm trying to develop my own style, but taking a lot of influence from mid-century modern artists, the American illustrators. Um, and I had this sticking point. I could not render what I needed to render. Broke through that wall, and all of a sudden, now, like you said, I'm kind of doing both. I'm pushing what I want to push, but it's also creating that niche. That word. I'm gonna have to look this up as soon as this show is over. Um, there's got to be a right way to say that word. But yeah, shameless plug. If anybody wants to check out my work, I have a website, jdkillustration.com. But honestly, I spend more time on Instagram and a little bit more updated, JAYDEKE, JDEK. I try to keep updated with all the projects that I do. I even do, in my story, I do progression pictures so you can see the process that I've been working with. And yeah, if anybody wants to reach out to me, just DM me directly there and I'll get back to you ASAP. But John, this has been super duper awesome. Fun to talk to you as always.
I think that you're a really good artist, dude, and as good of an artist as you are, you're a better person, and that means the world. Like, the art is great, and you're going to go far with it, but the reason why you'll go further is because of who you are as a person and your perspective on life, and your desire to keep on growing and growing and growing. That's big, dude.
I appreciate that. That
Yeah.
actually that means a lot. So I
Yeah.
appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Thanks, Jay.
Oh, side note on that Instagram page. By the way, we talked about slinging drinks. There's a few drink recipes in there too. If you want to know about Mai Tais and Long Island, so a little bonus material for you.
Yeah, you do great with those videos. I love
They're a
those.
blast. Those are my
Yeah.
quarantine cocktails. Those are good
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Really
Cool.
cool. Thanks,
All right,
Jay.
man. John. Good to see you. Take care, and yeah, I'll be in touch.
Jason, dude, thanks for being my guest. Didn't I tell you he was a cool guy? I mean, he has so much energy, and he is a deep thinker, and he's really committed to pursuing his career as an artist. And with the downtime he's had, he's been putting it to work to figure out his way, to figure out his niche, his Nike, whatever you call it. He's working on that. He's working on his portfolio, and he's making his way. And just like Jason, I would encourage you to take a step today, right after you get off of this show. Okay, when you're done and you put your phone down, or you turn your computer off, or wherever you're watching or listening to the Breakthrough Creative, make some headway on your own career. I don't know if it's a piece that you need to finish. I don't know if it's a client you need to call. I don't know if it's a cold call you need to make, or just something that you need to do in your business at large that is going to bring you closer to whatever your goal is in making a living as an artist, because that's what we are all about here at the Breakthrough Creative. So get busy working on your craft and making a living with what it is that you do creatively. Okay? I will see you next week.